services without providing a list. Especially when you already have VAT, why do you create a similar tax as VAT to run concurrently? And also for the gas sector, government says if you are flaring gas, then you pay corporate income tax rate of 50% instead of 30%. Again, this has a lot of question marks. One is we have the Petroleum Industry Act that was passed after almost 20 years. And one of the core objectives was to provide certainty to businesses. But the same government, just barely 1 year after, is now tinkering with that law by amending other provisions that affect taxation of that sector. By the way, government is the senior investor in most of these petroleum assets that are flaring gas. And government, based on my knowledge, has refused to make their own investment to reduce gas flaring. So why they turn around to punish the operators who are the junior investors? At the same time that Russia, because of their invasion of Ukraine, Europe in particular is looking for alternative source of gas supply, and they have billions of dollars. They are waving at investors to say, well, we are willing to invest, and this is the time that Nigeria should attract billions of dollars into our gas sector, which is also in line with our own transition in Nigeria to say gas is our transition energy because it's cleaner than real fossil fuel. Now, if you introduce arbitrary rates without engaging, without using data, then you're going to discourage those investments from coming to Nigeria and they'll go elsewhere. So these are some of the key changes in the law. The good ones, so it doesn't look like we're talking only about imposition of new taxes. There's a provision also in the finance bill to allow individuals and companies claim a deduction for their capital losses when they sell assets. Before now, you pay taxes when you make a gain, and when you make a loss, government says, I'm sorry, but I can't help you. So now government is saying, well, when you make a loss, it's just fair for us to allow you claim a deduction for your losses. For example, if you sell shares, and if you also pay a life assurance premium for yourself and your spouse, government says you can claim a deduction in your personal income tax returns. That would help the insurance sector to be able to attract more customers and therefore be able to grow. So these are some of the key provisions in the Finance Bill 2022, which is yet to be signed into law as of today.
I think we may do a show later to really break down elements of this finance bill, because even looking at it, I have a lot of questions to ask on each. Really, and even from what you said earlier, talking about even the implications to companies that are paying, taxes, that is the TET fund, and now it's going to be increased. What are the implications for even private companies that will be doing that? And how are we going to be seeing the tertiary institutions moving forward? Last year, we know that ASU was on strike for about 8 or 9 months or thereabout. You also mentioned the excise services on almost all services, including telecoms. But I don't want us to really dwell on that because I have also other questions to ask you at this point. But just before we move into that, you've not answered the name change of FIRS, Federal Inland Revenue Service, to the Nigeria Revenue Service. Are you smartly dodging that? Or you totally forgot?
I was the one who recommended it when the president was hosting the National Tax Dialogue at the State House early last year, and I was invited to speak, and I suggested that the FRS needs to change its name. What are the reasons for that? Number one, the name says Federal Inland Revenue Service. It presupposes that the FRS collects taxes for the federal government, and that is not the case. All the taxes collected by the FRS, whether it's VAT, 85% goes to state and local governments. Companies' income tax goes to federation account, petroleum profit tax, and the list goes on and on. Stamp duties goes to state alone. So these taxes are collected by the FRS and they are shared by all levels of government. So calling FRS a federal Inland Revenue Service does not seem to align with its legal mandate. Now, the second one is saying the FRS is inland, federal inland revenue service. Inland presupposes that you only collect taxes within the local jurisdiction of the country. And somebody would argue that FRS should not be collecting international taxes because it's an inland revenue service. Again, that's also a misalignment with the mandate of the FRS. But I think more broadly, other than this cosmetic, is to align the FRS with the rest of the world, in line with global standard, and also in line with the national tax policy, where it has been stated clearly that we need to have one revenue agency per level of government. So at the federal government, you should not be having all manners of agencies. I think about 63 of them, based on the budget for 2023, collecting revenue here and there. It creates a lot of efficiency. In fact, in many countries, you have the customs department within the revenue service. So these are the broad objectives of why the government is proposing that the FRS name be changed to Nigeria Revenue Service, and I align with that entirely. I would agree that you need more than a name change for you to make a bigger impact, but I would say it's the beginning of that process.
Okay. Do you also think that this name change may really, what are the implications, especially with what we saw last year? Was it last year, early last year, where we saw states like River State, Lagos State, even taking the federal government to court and indicating that some of the taxes that the FIS or the government is collecting should not be collected by them? And you understand what I'm saying? The hula baloo that we saw, was it 2022 or 2021? I can't even remember now, but you remember this fiasco that I'm talking about. So do you think that this is also a smart way, a smart solution to avoiding that? Or it doesn't really change?
Tackling the federal government as to no, this doesn't change that. It was in 2021 when we had the issues around VAT in particular. We still have other issues like electronic money transfer, as well as stamp duty. So constantly you're finding states in particular tackling the federal government as to what should be collected by what level of government. Of FRS will not impact on that. I think a bigger question is particularly our lawmakers could have done better with the proposed amendment to the Constitution, which seems to be going nowhere because the state lawmakers are not agreeing to pass it. But I was expecting that they should have been able to have more, inclusive conversation and engagement with the sub-national level to agree on what taxes need to be collected at what level. And the principle is very simple. Any tax that will cut across different states, like VAT. So you buy things in Kano, you sell them in Abuja. You have an online, house or platform in Lagos, and you supply to 36 states of Nigeria. You're a bank and you have branches all over. Your telecommunication. You have, we have too many connected businesses in Nigeria that will make it difficult for you to administer VAT effectively at the state level. So such taxes should be collected centrally. And then you address the issue of inequity and fairness in how the revenue is shared. If you share the revenue for VAT today based on derivation 100%, without all this equality and population that don't have any correlation to VAT, I think there will be less noise and agitation. Take something like stamp duty. Section 163 of the Constitution is very clear. It says that tax belongs to the state exclusively, not local government, not federal government. Then federal government decided to rename the stamp duty that people pay on bank transfer to say is now electronic money transfer to be shared between federal and state. And the 2022 finance bill, they now say with federal, state, and local government. So even annoying the state even more. So these issues are there, and I think they can only be properly addressed in the Constitution if the lawmakers can just take a step back and say, why is there no VAT mentioned in our Constitution at all? It was because the Constitution came before original constitution came before VAT. VAT came in 1993. This constitution we are running came in 1999, and I think they forgot. They didn't even think about tax when they were writing it. So they just copied 1979 constitution, made a few tweaks here and there, and forgot VAT. And that's why VAT is the conversation now as to who is supposed to collect. But I'll say, in line with what is best for Nigeria, given the much I know about the tax system and the economy and the business environment, VAT is best collected centrally with a very fair and equitable system of sharing it to states using data based on derivation.
Okay. I also like the points which you made earlier about in other clients, you see that talking about name change now, FIRS to Nigeria Revenue Service, in other clients which you mentioned, there's even customs added to it. I think the UK adopts that. Her Majesty, I guess it will be His Majesty now, His Majesty Revenue and Customs, HM, yes, His Majesty, or Her Majesty Revenue and Customs, but since Queen Elizabeth has passed, I guess it will also change to His Majesty's Revenue and Customs. So perhaps let's see what the name change will do, as you have said. Now let's move into the 2023 budget. It's been signed, sealed, and delivered. What are your views concerning this budget deficit, humongous budget deficit of over 11 trillion now that will be financed through borrowings and what have you? Let me not even just go ahead right now. Just tell me what your views are on this. You're a fiscal policy partner. This is your purview.
But I have issues with it. Particularly, yes, the budget for 2023 has been signed by the president, so it's now the Appropriation Act. Even the president himself expressed some reservations while signing. He says, by the way, I'm signing, but I have issues with the budget. Particularly, I think two areas. One is, although they don't like to say budget padding, but over 700, I think 770 billion had been added by the lawmakers in various projects, mostly constituency projects. And also, I find it interesting that in some cases, over 50 billion, they have said to some of the MDAs that, the amount we budgeted is too small, maybe you need more. And then they added to those amounts, which is why, this is some of the reasons why the budget padding, nomenclature came into our dictionary in Nigeria. So I think we could have done more in terms of the efficiency of what we budget for. Overall, you find a budget deficit that was high based on the original budget, and the lawmakers added more to it. In the size of the deficit alone, which is more than 11 trillion, in fact, is more than the entire size of the budget that we had in 2020, just about 3 years ago. Nigeria's budget was about 10.8 trillion. So we've grown so quickly in a very short period, expanding government spending so very quickly, and maybe even in the wrong places, including recurrent expenditure, including debt service, including sometimes what I consider to be a wrong priority of capital expenditure. So why do you, for example, spend a little money on the money you don't even have trying to do Nigerian air? Why do you have to worry about the refineries? You spend billions of dollars over the years without any results. Why do you have to keep spending money for infrastructure where the private sector has been, proven all over the world to be more effective in delivering those infrastructure more efficiently, making money, and in fact paying taxes to government in the process? So the budget, in my view, has not been able to demonstrate to us that we are in a dire situation, and therefore we need to be smarter with how we budget. We need to be smarter with how we rate revenue. We still have 63 different MDAs there chasing revenue, and you know what that means. It means more burden for the private sector. It means more inefficiency in terms of collection, because many of these agencies were not trained. They don't have the skills to collect taxes. More leakages, so Nigerians will pay more and government will collect less. When what we need to do is to harmonize everything, reduce the number of taxes, unify the collection agency into only the FRS or whatever name it becomes, And like you said, it's not only the HMRC where you have customs merged with revenue, even Ghana Revenue Authority, GRA, Kenya Revenue Authority in Kenya, the South African Revenue Service in South Africa. You have plenty of them in Africa. In fact, you will struggle to find any tax authority that operates in the same structure as Nigeria is doing currently. So I believe we could have done more in the area of revenue. Some of the changes are expected in the finance bill to help us with the budget and with the economy. Were not considered. For example, we still have provisions in Nigerian tax law today that require businesses to pay their taxes in foreign currency if those transactions were in foreign currency. So just imagine for a moment, that Moneyline with Nancy, you require some software to be able to interview me today virtually. And you have to pay some companies, I don't want to advertise for them in the US, and the money is $10,000. You first have to go and join the queue to bid for $10,000 to pay for that software. When you pay me VAT, 7.5%, you deduct withholding tax, 10% on this amount, and I need you to pay it in dollars. So you go back to the foreign exchange market to queue for maybe another $2,000 to pay government. Now, what you're doing is you're creating an artificial demand for dollars in Nigeria for the dollar that is already in Nigeria, so you can go and pay the government of Nigeria. So the only thing you benefit is you depreciate Naira further. It does not add $1 to Nigeria's exchange reserve. When the whole world descended on Russia because of the sanctions, and their currency was falling like there's no tomorrow. They did two things. One, they said, buy my crude oil in my local currency.
Yeah.
And then just December last year, they said, pay all my taxes in local currency.
Yeah.
And their currency appreciated because those who needed to pay those taxes brought their dollars and they were looking for rupees, right? So in Nigeria, you should create demand for Naira, not demand against the Naira. That wasn't done. We have the Japa syndrome where a lot of our people are leaving the country to stay in Nigeria and work for global organizations. As of today, the tax laws don't permit that because that global employer will get into trouble in Nigeria based on what they call permanent establishment, when they will become liable to pay tax to government. But the world has moved on. You can sit down in Lagos or Abuja and work for an American company on American transactions that have nothing to do with Nigeria. We did not amend the law to address that. And then you have a few other things here and there where we could have responded more effectively to our economic situation as of today, whether you're talking about revenue generation, efficiency of spending, and also of public debt management.
Thank you, Mr. Oyedele, for bringing that up, really, in terms of even this Japa syndrome, which we've seen now. It is Andrew is checking out 2.0 now that we are seeing the component. I like that component which you brought in, that the government would have taken cognizance of that and even bringing it into the law, so that some of these people that want to japa our japa may actually be in Nigeria and be working for global organizations. And many of them are even actually happening right now. But how is the government taking advantage of that? That's a discussion for another day. I want to speak to you because we just have a few more minutes to go, perhaps 5 minutes if I'm not mistaken, or less than 5 minutes actually, about Nigeria's election next month. What do you think? What do you think also is the impact of the 2023 elections? Because a big part or some part of the 2023 budget is also going to INEC to conduct these elections. Then the second part of the question is, what's your 2023 outlook really? At the beginning of this program, I did try to paint, the realistic picture of what the economy would look like this year, and the quest for us to get it right on the path of recovery, because who enters quickly is not just going to be progress. We are going to recover first, and we will, take the path to progress. So what's your economic outlook for this year? As well as, the other question which I asked earlier.
But also being realistic. Yeah, I think for the elections, I want to be, positive and optimistic, but also being realistic. I've looked at the manifestos of the leading candidates, and for the three leading candidates, they all said they're going to remove first subsidy To some extent, just talk about harmonizing the exchange rate of Nigeria to have a single window. In fact, if anybody does just those two alone, you see a significant improvement in the Nigerian economy. And plus that, if you can then address electricity, I know electricity is not something you can do in a few days or a few months, but some of it are regulatory and policy impediments that you need to get out of the way. So any government that addresses foreign exchange harmonization, that addresses fuel subsidy removal, and is able to address electricity can go to sleep. Everything else will fix itself. Maybe just the only thing will be insecurity that you also need to pay attention to. So I keep hope alive that since these leading candidates are saying this, hopefully they mean what they put in their manifestos. It gives me the hope that even though 2023 will be a year of two halves, you have the first half with the current government, and then you have the second half after the handover, essentially with the new government trying to settle down and transit. But some of these issues, in my view, are low-hanging fruit that you can do within 100 days of a new administration. Now, in terms of the outlook, unfortunately, the outlook is not looking great. Globally, it's been predicted that about 1/3 of the world economy will get into recession. We go into recession. Luckily, Nigeria is not one of them. But also for those who would not go into recession, the IMF says it will feel like a recession. And I think that is really apt. In Nigeria, we grew last year a little over 2%. It's projected this year will be around 2 or 3% as well. But for the vast majority of Nigerians, and also considering the population growth rate, they're already in recession. Every household, every individual has their own inflation rate. If a family is poor, they tend to spend most of their money on food. Food inflation is different from the average inflation rate. Same thing for energy inflation. Some people have spent 400% more in energy cost as at the end of the year than the beginning of the year for 2022. The same thing for unemployment. If the parents, father and mom are unemployed, unemployment rate for that household is 100%. Now, for majority of these, households and even some small businesses, they are already in recession, and that's why 133 million Nigerians are multidimensionally poor. This has to be the focus of not only this government, but whoever is applying to be the next CEO of corporate Nigeria or Nigeria. I should focus on how do we address these issues, particularly from the very basic need of education, healthcare, living standard, security issues, and then avoiding policy missteps that is adding more to our problem that's already difficult as it is. Overall, I think that 2023 will be a tough year, but we can take decisions and introduce policies to make it better for us, and individuals, households, and businesses can also try and take steps to make sure that even in the middle of those tough outlook, they can have reasons to smile.
And on that smiling note, we end the show today. I think you're just in tandem with what I said at the beginning of the program. All predictions, forecasts say it's not going to be, an easier, but our destiny is really in our hands. And with the Supreme being up there, you can be rest assured. Thank you very much, Mr. Oyedele, for joining us this morning. Thank you for your insights.
Thank you for having me.
All right, I've been speaking with Taiwo Oyedele, who is the fiscal policy partner and the Africa tax leader at PricewaterhouseCoopers, PwC. We've been talking about a potpourri of many issues, the state of the Nigerian economy as it is. Thank you all for joining us at today. Be the best it can be and be the change that you want to see this year, 2023. I am Nancy Naji. Bye for now.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. This is a very crucial civic engagement. Happy New Year for those of us that have not seen this year. Thank you so much for tuning in. It is exactly 47 days, 12 hours to the opening of the 2023 presidential election. What a defining moment in the political history of this great nation. In this coming election, more than 90 million people are now registered to vote across 176,846 polling units. 71% of the over 12 million new voter card registrants are young people between the age of 18 and 35. And more than ever, the conversation is rife across platforms, and there is no better time to keep the tempo of the engagement on than now. The People's Town Hall is a brainchild of Channels Television and its partners, the UK Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office, through the Nigeria Civil Society Situation Room.